an internal relation that a thing bears to itself. To the extent that a thing changes, it becomes, strictly speaking, a different thing. But the relation between two things is not the change of a thing, it is simply the difference between two non-changing entities. A young man does not grow old. When he is old, he is no longer a young man. The relation between the young man and the old man is simply the difference of two things. But an old man doesn't grow old either. He is already old. So if change and things that change are thought of non-relationally, we can make no sense of change at all. 6. If a thing itself changed, milk itself would be curd. Or curd would have come to be an entity different from milk. If we think of identity persisting through change, there is a single thing that changes as conventionally, milk becomes curd. Since that thing is identical to milk and to curd, by transitivity we would have to say that curd and milk are identical. But no one would want to put curd in her tea. The only way to avoid this result while retaining the idea that milk and curd are entities would be to consider them to be wholly different entities. In that case, there is still no change in an entity, only the difference between two unrelated phenomena. 7. If there were even a trifle non-empty, emptiness itself would be but a trifle. But not even a trifle is non-empty. How could emptiness be an entity? Verses 7 and 8 are critical for any understanding of the subtle doctrine Nagarjuna is developing of the emptiness of emptiness. In 13:7, Nagarjuna is emphasizing that emptiness is not one of the many properties that a thing might or might not have. It is not that some things are empty and some are non-empty, or that all things happen to be empty although they might have been otherwise. Emptiness is important because it is the only way that things can exist. Moreover, emptiness is not an entity. It is not a distinct phenomenon to which other phenomena are related. It is exactly the emptiness of all phenomena. The conventional character of conventional entities and their emptiness are one and the same. 8. The victorious ones have said that emptiness is the relinquishing of all views. For whomever emptiness is a view, that one will accomplish nothing. The sense of view, tib, ultabiye, skt, jutfi, at work in verse 8 is crucial. By a view, Nagarjuna here means a theory on the same level of discourse at which reificationist nihilist debates proceed. A view in this sense is a view about what does or does not exist when existence is taken to mean inherent existence, or about the nature of phenomena, presupposing that the idea of a nature is coherent. So both the theory that compounded phenomena exist in virtue of having natures and identities and the theory that since they don't have such natures and identities they don't exist at all are views in this sense. Both presuppose that things exist at all if and only if they do so inherently. But the analysis in terms of emptiness is not a view at all in this sense. For the claim is not that things exist in virtue of having the property of emptiness as an essence. Rather it is the claim that they are empty because they have no essence. It is also very important to see that this understanding of what a view is closely bound up with Nagarjuna's account of assertion and of the role of language in Madhyamika dialectic. For Nagarjuna, assertion in the literal sense is always the ascription of a property to an entity. As long as we are talking from the conventional standpoint, there is no problem here. There are plenty of conventional entities and conventional properties to go around and, so, lots of available conventionally true assertions. That is the basis of conventional truth. It is also important to note here that corresponding to these conventional assertions are real propositions that make them true or false entities with or without the ascribed properties. Again, as long as we remain and are aware that we remain within the framework of conventional designation and conventional assertion, this poses no problems. But, when we start to do metaphysics, it is easy to slip into nonsense. For now, when we want to characterize the essence of a thing, we take ourselves to be positing a non-conventional thing and ascribing to it an essential property. And there not only are no such things, but there are not even possibly such things. There is no ultimate way the world is that we are characterizing, truly or falsely. The danger to which Nagarjuna is here adverting with respect to Madhyamika philosophy, of treating Madhyamika as a view, is then connected to assertion in the following way. If one were to think that in asserting that things are empty that one is positing entities and ascribing to those independent entities the property of emptiness, one would be treating the language of Madhyamaka as making literal assertions. But from the standpoint from which these would be true, there are no entities and no characteristics, and a fortiori, there are no entities having the characteristic of being empty. The language must hence be understood, from the ultimate perspective, not as making assertions, but rather as ostending, indicating that which cannot be literally asserted without falling into nonsense, as Wittgenstein puts it in the Tractatus, showing that which cannot be said. Nagarjuna makes this much more explicit in his discussion of positionlessness in Vigrahavyuvartani XXXXV, where he explicitly denies that the Madhyamaka assert any propositions, in virtue of there being no entities or properties presupposed by their use of language existing independently and corresponding to the words used. Aryadeva makes the same point at Katasataka 16. Candrakirti in his comments on these verses compares one who treats emptiness as an essential property as opposed to the lack of any essential property, thus treating Madhyamaka language as assertoric in the sense of asserting the view that all things have the essential nature of emptiness, to one who, upon entering a shop and learning that there are no wares for sale, asks the shopkeeper to sell him the no wares. To hold a view of emptiness, to reify it and then attribute it to phenomena, would then involve simultaneously reifying those phenomena as having a fixed nature and denying their existence at all, in virtue of disparaging their conventional reality as unreality by contrast with the reality of emptiness. It is this incoherence, so characteristic of essentialist philosophies, that leads Nagarjuna to assert that one holding such a view is completely hopeless, incapable of accomplishing anything, philosophically or soteriologically. This argument against the coherence of any understanding of emptiness as itself an essence is tied very tightly to the analysis in chapter 24, of the emptiness of emptiness and of the connection between emptiness, dependent arising, and convention, and tied most directly to the concluding verse of the text, XXVI. The commentaries on Ziv and XXV below may be useful in elucidating this verse as well. It is clearly an early anticipation of the powerful and climactic conclusions drawn in those two discussions.